Chapter 8 Eldarin Traditions Concerning the Awakening. This text is written in black nib pen on 5 sides of 4 sheets of online paper. It dates from c. 1959. As was seen at the end of the previous chapter, the legend of Imin, Tata, and Enel arose in the context of Tolkien's desire to reduce the number of weddings and thus begettings of the Eldar on the march, while still having sufficient numbers of elves to believably populate both Amon and Balerion, and yet allow Finwë to still be of marriageable age when he arrives in Amon. While the subsequent typescript version of this text, published in the Whir of the Jewels, follows this manuscript as amended quite closely, see The Legend of the Awakening of the Quendi Cui Vianyarna, XI 420-4, there are enough differences of details and textual development to warrant giving the full manuscript version here in the context in which the legend first arose. Summary of the Eldarin Traditions Concerning the Awakening and of the Legend of the Cui Vianyarna. During the waking of the first Hroar from the flesh of Arda, the Quendi slept in the womb of Arda, beneath the green sword, and awoke when they were full-grown. But the first elves, also called the Unbegotten or the Eru Begotten, did not all wake together. Eru had so ordained that each should lie beside his or her destined spouse. Footnote 1. As first written, this read predestined spouse. End footnote. But 3 elves awoke first of all, and they were elfmen, for elfmen are more strong in Hroa and more eager and adventurous in strange places. Footnote 2. The qualifier elf in elfman was a later insertion. End footnote. These 3 are named in the oldest traditions, Imin, Tata, and Enel. They awoke in that order, but with little time between each, and from them, say the Eldar, the words for 1, 2, and 3 were made, the oldest of all numerals, asterisk. The Eldarin words referred to are Min, Ata, or Tata, Nelde. The reverse is probably historical. The 3 had no names until they had developed language, and were given or took names after they had devised numerals or at least the first 12. And asterisk. Footnote 3. For other Eldarin traditions concerning the numerals, see Eldarin, hands, fingers, and numerals in Chapter 3 in Part 2 of this book. End footnote. Imin, Tata, and Enel awoke before their spouses, and the first thing that they saw was the stars, for they woke in the early twilight before dawn, and the next thing they saw was their destined spouse lying asleep on the green sward beside them. Footnote 4. As first written, what became these 2 sentences read, the first thing that each saw was his destined spouse lying asleep on the green sward. End footnote. And they were so enamored of their beauty that their desire for speech was immediately quickened, and they began to think of words to speak and sing in. And being impatient, they could not wait, but woke up their spouses. Thus, say the Eldar, elf women ever after reached maturity sooner than elf men, for it had been intended that they should wake later than their spouses. Footnote 5. As first written, this sentence originally ended, sooner than elf men, and were usually wedded to elf men a little older than themselves. End footnote. But after a time, when they had dwelt together a little and had devised many words, Imin and Iminye, Tata and Tatie, Enel and Enelye, walked together and left the green dell of their waking. And they came soon to another dell and found their 6 pairs of Quendi, and the stars were again shining in the morrow dim, and the elf men were just waking. Footnote 6. The words "the stars were again shining in the morrow dim" and were a marginal insertion in black nib pen. As first written, the last phrase of the sentence began, 6 pairs of Quendi still asleep, but... End footnote. Then Imin claimed to be the eldest and to have the right of first choice, and he said, I choose these 12 to be my companions. And the elfmen woke their spouses, and when the 18 elves had dwelt together a little and had learned many words and devised more, they walked on together, and soon in another even deeper and wider hollow they found 9 pairs of Quendi, and the elfmen had just waked in the starlight. Then Tata claimed the right of second choice, and he said, I choose these 18 to be my companions. Then again the elfmen woke their spouses, and they dwelt and spoke together, and devised many new sounds and new and longer words. Footnote 7. As first written, this phrase read, devised many new words and artifices of speech. End footnote. And then 36 walked abroad together until they came to a grove of birches by a stream, and there they found 12 pairs of quendi, and the elf men likewise were just standing up and looking at the stars through the birch boughs. Then Enel claimed the right of third choice, and he said, I choose these 24 to be my companions. Again, the elf men woke their spouses, and for many days the 60 elves dwelt by the stream, and soon they began to make verse and song to the music of the water. At length, they all set out together again, but Emin noticed that each time they had found more quendi than before, and he thought to himself, I have only 12 companions, although I am the eldest. I will take a later choice. Soon they came to a sweet-smelling firwood on a hillside, and there they found 18 pairs of quendi, and all were still sleeping. It was still night, and clouds were in the sky. But before dawn a wind came and roused the elf men, and they woke and were amazed at the stars, for all the clouds were blown away, and the stars were bright from east to west. And for a long time the 18 new quendi took no heed of the others, but looked at the light of Menel. But when at last they turned their eyes back to earth, they beheld their spouses and woke them to look at the stars, crying to them, Ellen, Ellen. Footnote 8. The end of this sentence, crying to them, etc., entered as a marginal insertion apparently not long after the original composition. End footnote. And so the stars got their name. Now Emin said, I will not choose again yet, and Tata therefore chose these 36 to be his own companions, and they were tall and dark-haired and strong like the fir trees, and from them most of the Noldor later were sprung. And the 96 quendi now spoke together, and the newly waked devised many new and beautiful words and many cunning artifices of speech, and they laughed and danced upon the hillside until at last they desired to find more companions. Then they all set out again together until they came to a lake dark in the twilight, and there was a great cliff above it upon the east side, and a waterfall came down from the height, and the stars glittered on the foam. But the elf men were already bathing in the waterfall, and they had waked their spouses. There were 24 pairs, but as yet they had no formed speech, though they sang sweetly, and their voices echoed in the stone, mingling with the rush of the falls. But again Emin withheld his choice, thinking, next time it will be a great company. Therefore, Enel said, I have the choice, and I choose these 48 to be my companions. And 144 quendi dwelt long together by the lake until they all became of one mind in speech and were glad. Footnote 9. As first written, this paragraph ended with a partial sentence. But though they loved all that they yet had seen before this was struck out. End footnote. At length, Emin said, It is time now. We should go on and seek more companions. But most of the others were content. So Emin and Eminye and their 12 companions set out, and they walked long by day and by twilight in all the country about the lake, near which all the quendi had awakened, for which reason it is called Cuivienen. Footnote 10. As first written, this read, for which reason it was called Cuivienen. End footnote. But they never found any more companions, for the tale of the first elves was complete. And so it was that the quendi ever after reckoned in 12s, and that 144 was for long their highest number, so that in none of their later tongues was there any common name for greater numbers. Footnote 11. As first written, this sentence began, and so it came about. End footnote. And so also it came about the companions of Emin, or the eldest company, of whom came the Ingar, asterisk, Vanyar, and asterisk, were nonetheless only 14 in all, and the smallest company and the companions of Tata, of whom came the Noldor, were 56 in all, but the companions of Enel, although the youngest company, were the largest. From them came the Teleri, or Lindar, and they were in the beginning 74 in all. Footnote 12. As first written, the text continued with, and the Lindar from the beginning were most in love with water, by which they awakened, but all the quendi, although they loved, ending abruptly there, before this passage was struck through. End footnote. Now the quendi loved all of ardor that they had yet seen, and green things that grow, and the sun of summer were their delight, but nonetheless they were ever moved most in heart by the stars, and the hours of twilight and morrow, dim and even dim, and clear weather were the times of their greatest joy. Footnote 13. As first written, this sentence began, Now the Quendi, although they loved all of ardor that they had yet seen, and green things that grow were their delight. End footnote. For in those hours in the spring of the year they had first awakened to life in Narda. But the Lindar, above all the other Quendi, from their beginning were most in love with water and sang before they could speak.